Hey folks, Curtis Stone here. Today we're carrying on our series of videos where we analyze all the states and provinces in Canada and the US around a homesteading context. So what are the kinds of things we're looking for that make a great homestead, and what kind of things do we want to avoid, and some kind of just broad thoughts as well. And let's get into it. So today we're going to look at Nebraska, and we're going to go through and analyze all of our no-go zones and places that we might want to consider. So right out of the gate, Nebraska, we've reviewed a number of these states already, but there is a really big sort of climate region that you could identify very easily if you've been to any of these places. I'll just draw this out. It's kind of broad, but it is what it is. And even over here in parts of Colorado, this region here that you're looking at, that I'm drawing out, is very similar in the experience that you have in the climate. And the only thing that's really going to vary here, so if you're thinking about what do we look at when we're considering climate? Well, we think about the precipitation, and we think about the heat, and we think about sort of the general flora and fauna, okay? And of course, beyond that, the topography is important, the soil is important, and they're all kind of actually very similar in all of these places. Saskatchewan, parts of Manitoba, Montana, part of Wyoming, Colorado, Oklahoma, Nebraska, a tiny bit of Texas, but probably not even much of it, because it's so hot and inhospitable in that part of Texas that not a lot of people live there. But the point I'm trying to make is that if you've been to any of these areas in this red circle, you kind of know what it's like there. And I mentioned this when we looked at Kansas, but you'll also experience a similarity in the people. And what is that? It's good old farm boys. It's farmers, and it's that culture of people that run big ag farms. And I'm not a fan of big ag. At the same time, good old farm boys, they're just doing the best they can. They don't know. And it might not be that they don't know. Actually, most conventional farmers I know that what they do isn't good, but they're doing it because it's their job, and they're kind of stuck in that situation. Okay, so my heart goes out to them, and I don't fault them for being part of big ag, because I don't want to live in big ag. But the people are amazing. The people are amazing, and so that to me is the biggest draw of any of these places, because frankly I don't like the climate of any of these places. It's just not my thing. Prairies. I like mountains and trees. And so that's just not my thing. But the people are. The people are. And perhaps part of the places that I choose to focus on are somewhat biased to what I like. Having said that, I've also been a consultant for a long time and have been solving problems for people in regards to living on homesteads for a long time. And so mostly it comes from that, is that the best places to live are in the trees, in being closer to nature. The trees provide a huge amount of shelter in many ways, rain and wind. They provide a stabilization in the soil. Trees and forests bring water up to the surface and create springs. Everything about being near trees is important for human existence in a healthy way. Of course, that's my opinion, but I think you could really delve deeper into the science of why that is as well. Another way I put it is I want to be closer to God's creation and less close to man's creation. Man's creation is concrete and infrastructure, buildings and things like that. God's creation are the trees, the forests, the rivers. And so I prefer to be closer to those things. And I think it's more conducive for a healthy lifestyle. So that being said, where do we avoid when we're thinking about Nebraska? Because what is Nebraska? It's like all these other places. It's big ag, but it's also the vast majority of this state is semi-arid desert or steppe climate. That's what all this light brown stuff is. That's what that stuff is. That stuff is also good for agriculture and just big ag, if you can bring water to it. And then that's where when you zoom in to a place like Nebraska and you see center pivots everywhere. So if you've ever driven along the highways here, I've been through most of these states. It's just fields, and just straight highways and fields. and chemicals and tractors and grain silos and, that kind of infrastructure. And so if we didn't have large scale infrastructure for irrigation to bring water to all these farms, nobody would live here. Nobody. This here is the natural environment of what's here, and this is the manufactured environment of what's here. So it's nice to be near irrigation. It's nice to be near water, right? But it's not nice to be near glyphosate and, all kinds of other agrochemicals that are used in this. So we want to avoid pretty much all of that. And all these sort of river valleys that go through all these states, Kansas, South Dakota, North Dakota, all of them, they are also major agricultural belts. Just look at that. Boom, boom, thick. And it's nice and green too, as it should be. You're putting huge amounts of water in it. And so, when it comes to Nebraska, like, it's better to just not live in that because it's poison. It's poison. And the cities are big too. The cities, in the prairie provinces aren't as big as the coastal prairie states aren't as big as the coastal states. Some exceptions, obviously. Chicago, Detroit are all huge. But these cities, they're not as huge as some other places, but they're fairly big. These are pretty big regions. So we want to avoid those areas altogether, right? Just stay out of the thick mass of the populations and don't be near the masses when the shit goes south, basically, when the shit hits the fan. So we want to avoid those places altogether. And then what are some good areas to consider in Nebraska? They're all going to involve being close to nature, being closer to trees and a bit more dynamic topography. But even in Nebraska, like, look at this, you got center pivots, even in these areas. But this is what we're really talking about, is getting into more nature and less from big ag. And so in Nebraska, it just really limits your searches. You could dive in and say, okay, maybe, no, not even. It's all center pivots. You just look, when you look at it in the macro, you go, oh, that looks like maybe a natural pattern. No, not at all. So avoid those areas because they're threats to your health and well-being. And so, same here when we come in, even still in Nebraska, like, look, what are we talking about? Because there's even center pivots down here. But look at this little area here. That's like literally, that's it. That's where I'd be looking, is these little slivers. And so it makes it, as far as homesteading, some states and provinces are more conducive to homesteading than others. Like, for example, in Missouri, where do we want to homestead? In the green. The Ozark region in Missouri is unbelievable. That region carries down through Arkansas, Oklahoma, even in parts of Texas. Beautiful geographical area, very conducive to homesteading because there's no big ag, right? But then the rest of Missouri over here, forget about it. It's the same thing in Nebraska. It's the same pattern in Kansas. Like, all these places aren't really that different. Because in the U.S. there's so many states, unlike Canada that has big provinces that, cover huge, like multiple states are covered in the Canadian context. But it's this, what we're looking for is geographical and climate patterns and flora and fauna and precipitation. Looking for those patterns, and then that's what we're ranking on, really. I don't really care about Nebraska or Kansas or the individual states. I care about the topography, the water, precipitation, what's going on for threats. That's what we care about. So, as we say, the devil's in the details, and it certainly is. And then the other thing is the socioeconomic factors. There's going to be varying socioeconomic factors that are different from state to state based on the politics of it. But at the end of the day, it comes down to how do those things affect you, and you can customize your life to be as free or as less free as you like. It really comes down to where you choose to live. So that's food for thought for Nebraska. As we do these other provinces, and states are gonna be a similar review, especially North Dakota, South Dakota, Kansas, Nebraska, and this part of Oklahoma. They're pretty much all the same as far as where you want to live and what your considerations are. Oklahoma gets a little bit more varied, right? Because that Ozark region comes through. And there's more things to consider. But yeah, avoid big ag, get into the trees, get into where there's water that isn't poisoned by the big ag. All right, folks, if you guys found this video helpful, smash the like. Let me know what you think. Where should we go next? Tell me what I missed. Tell me, oh, Curtis, you need to think about this with Nebraska. Hey, I read all your guys' comments. So, but if you guys want to learn more about this kind of thing I'm doing, check out the web class that I have. It's in the show notes here or on the video. And it shows you 3 things you can do to help really accelerate and avoid mistakes, your process when you're looking for an off-grid homestead or a homestead in one way or the other. All right, folks, we'll see you in the next one.